Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are making a pistachio cake. This cake took so much trial and error because I was determined to make sure I got the perfect, best pistachio flavor in every bite. It was a lot of work, but the end result is totally worth it. I can't wait for you to try this one, so let's get started. Now, the first ingredient you're going to need today is no surprise. You're going to need 1 cup of unsalted butter. But what we're doing with this butter is a little bit different from most of our cakes. Today we're going to be browning this butter before we add it to our cake. So we're going to head over to the stovetop, grab yourself a medium-sized pan, and we are going to start browning this butter. If you've never done it before, don't worry, it's very easy. I'll show you how. It's only going to take a couple minutes. Drop our butter right in the pan. Now, when I was testing this recipe, of course, I tried it without browning the butter, and we got a decent cake. But what I really wanted was a really nice depth of flavor, that warm, toasty, nutty flavor. And brown butter actually does a very, very good job of complementing the pistachios. So this ingredient really sets this cake apart from any others you may have tried. Now we're going to turn our stove top to medium heat, and we're just going to cook the butter and swirl it occasionally until the butter is completely melted. Just going to break up this butter a little bit, help speed up the process some. And you'll want to have a heat-proof spatula or a wooden spoon handy because we're going to use this once our butter starts browning. Okay, once the butter is completely melted, I like to drop down the heat to just a notch below medium, and I'm going to continue to cook it, stirring frequently. What you're going to notice is this butter is going to start to pop and fizz and sizzle. That's great. Just keep stirring it, scraping the bottom. It'll get a little vigorous at some point. That's normal. What's happening is all of the water is evaporating out of the butter. Once that water has evaporated, what's going to happen is the milk solids left in the butter are going to start to toast and turn brown. That is what gives this butter so much flavor and in turn gives our cake so much flavor. You do want to keep a close eye on this. Never walk away from browning butter because it can very quickly turn into burned butter if you're not stirring it enough, and that's bad news. That doesn't taste good at all. Exactly how long this takes is going to vary depending on your pan, your burner, lots of things. But I'd say when all is said and done, butter is easily browned in under 10 minutes. All right, the fizzing has slowed down considerably. I'm still scraping the bottom and I'm starting to see some brown bits. I want to get a little bit more browning before I remove this. Hopefully you can see this here. It's a great idea to use a light colored pan as well because then it's so much easier to see the browning that's happening. Another great way to tell that it's done is it's going to start to smell amazing. Okay, we have some nice browning happening here. This is coming off the stovetop. Turn that off. And I'm going to immediately pour this into a heat-proof bowl. And I am going to get every last drop of that browned butter and those browned butter bits in this bowl because we do not waste butter and we really don't waste brown butter. Every little brown speck in here is a flavor bomb. Okay, now the bad news. You are going to have to wait for this butter to cool completely before you can add it to your cake. It doesn't need to re-solidify, but you want it to be no longer warm to the touch. Just put your hand on the bottom of the bowl. Don't do it now because it's super hot, but just set it aside and let it cool down before we start making the cake. While it's cooling, we can get our oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and we can also prepare our pistachios. Possibly our most important ingredient, we have our pistachios. I am using salted, dry roasted pistachios. They are pretty much the only ones I can find. I did do some testing with unsalted pistachios. I will leave a note in the comments if you can't find salted, dry roasted, but these are very accessible, so this is what I use. You'll need a cup of pistachios and we're going to finely chop them. I'm just going to be using my handy little tool here. I love this thing. I use it all the time. Just drop my pistachios in there. A couple strays here. You could use a full-size food processor instead, that would be fine, but I am just going to use my mini one and just pulse these a couple times. And if you don't have a food processor, you could absolutely just use a knife and finely chop these like you would any nut. Just quickly pulse them. And let's take a look. For consistency, you can pretty much make them any size that you want. I like them to be pretty fine though, so take a look at that. I still have some larger pieces, so I'm just going to do a couple quick more pulses, but you don't want to overdo it or you'll end up with pistachio butter. There we go. Put those in a bowl so you can get a better look at them. and we'll set these aside to use in a bit. So once your butter has cooled, it's no longer warm to the touch, we can start making our cake batter. This recipe starts with 3 cups of cake flour, and I love using cake flour because it's going to give that cake a nice plush crumb. And we'll also be adding 2 cups of granulated sugar. If you've been baking cakes with me for a while, you'll recognize by me adding the sugar in with the dry ingredients that we are going to be doing the reverse creaming method with today's recipe, which is going to give the cake a beautiful crumb, and as a bonus, it's going to make it more difficult to accidentally overmix the cake. We'll also be adding 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a ½ teaspoon of baking soda. We'll add 3/4 teaspoon of table salt, and we'll whisk these ingredients together until they are well combined. All right, now here's where the reverse creaming method comes in. This is kind of the reverse creaming. It's not exactly how it would normally go. And we're just going to add our brown butter right in with our dry ingredients and our sugar. Look at those brown bits. Those, they make the cake so amazing. And like I said, they really accent that pistachio flavor. So we're going to stir this mixture together until all of the dry ingredients are moistened and we have a sandy mixture. I'll show you what it looks like. You could use a stand mixer for this step. That would work great. Today I'm just going to be using my electric hand mixer. All right, let's take a look at this delicious smelling mixture. As you can see, it's kind of got an awkward texture at this point. It's pretty dry, it's pretty stiff, but this is exactly what you're aiming for. So this looks perfect for all intents and purposes. So we'll just slide this out of the way. And for this next step, you will either need a medium-sized mixing bowl, or I just like to use a large measuring cup. So I have measured out 1½ cups of buttermilk. Ideally, this should be room temperature. It's just going to help your cake ingredients combine a little bit easier. We're also going to add 2 large eggs. These should also be room temperature. And we'll add them right in with the buttermilk. We'll add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. It's not very much vanilla extract. I just wanted that subtle vanilla undertone because the real flavor that we want to shine today is the pistachio. Now, interestingly, to get that nice pistachio flavor, in addition to the pistachios, we're going to be using almond extract. This is 3/4 teaspoon of almond extract. And now we'll whisk these ingredients together until everything is nicely combined. You want to make sure those eggs are nicely broken up and you have a well incorporated mixture. Those yolks are always slippery, so make sure you beat them up. All right, let's bring back our funky looking butter mixture. And we're going to use our mixer on low speed to gradually stir this into the batter. Now I start by just adding a small bit. It's going to be a little bit resistant to incorporating at first. This is one of the reasons using room temperature ingredients is so important, because if it's cold, it can start to seize up that butter and give you an awkward batter. This is already smelling amazing. All right, before we go any further, let's scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl. Make sure everything's nicely incorporated, which this is. Everything's looking beautiful. See those little bits of brown butter in there? Oh, so good. Now let's grab our pistachios and we will stir these in as well. We'll fold these in. Now what you will notice about this cake is that it's not naturally going to become very green. That's fine. Obviously the color is not going to change the flavor at all, but if you are looking for a green cake, you can add a bit of food coloring. So AmeriColor gels are what I typically use if I use food coloring. Use these for my macarons, and I have found either mint green or avocado will work nicely. You want to use a really small bit. I actually, since I have both, like to use a little bit of both of them. Let's stir this in. Always start with less food coloring than you think you need, because it's very easy to add food coloring and it is not easy to remove it. Not that I condone eating cake batter, because I'm sure that's not a safe thing to say, but this is the best tasting cake batter of your life. Not that I condone it or would ever eat it. Okay, we have a nice pale green pistachio color. Let's go ahead and divide this into our cake pans. I'm using 3 8-inch cake pans today. I have lightly greased and floured them, and as I always do, I've cut out rounds of parchment paper for the bottom of the pan. This is going to ensure that your cakes do not stick, which is just one of the most frustrating things that can happen. Let's go and evenly distribute our cake batter into these pans as best we can. Use your spatula to smooth the batter into the cake pan. I could have done a much worse job at dividing this. It's looking pretty good. And these will go into the center rack of your 350 Fahrenheit preheated oven, where they need to bake for about 25 minutes. If all of your cakes don't fit in the oven at the same time, one can sit on the counter while the others bake. I also want to note that most ovens do not bake evenly, so when you check your cakes, make sure you check each one of them, not just one cake. The cakes will be finished when a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean or with a few moist crumbs. We're going to let these cakes cool in the baking pan for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then once it's cooled, we're going to take a butter knife, run it around the edge of the cake just in case it's stuck any. It shouldn't, but we're just going to be extra cautious. And then we will carefully invert this onto a cooling rack, and I say carefully because remember that pan is still going to be pretty warm. So I just take my cooling rack. Thanks to our parchment paper liners, those cakes did not stick at all. We can remove those liners, don't forget to do that. And then we are going to let these cakes cool completely on the cooling rack before we assemble them. While the cakes are cooling, you'll want to prepare the frosting that you'll be using to ice this cake. You can use whatever you like. A white chocolate or even chocolate buttercream could pair nicely with a pistachio, but after doing lots of testing, Swiss meringue buttercream is actually my favorite. Other good options include my marshmallow frosting and my cream cheese frosting. I almost forgot for a second. Now, before I assemble the cakes, I'm going to quickly level them just so I have a nice looking cake that's nice and level. This is just my very inexpensive leveler. I use it all the time. I will make sure to link to this in the description. It just makes it so easy to level the cakes. I have tried doing this with a knife and my eyeballs, and we ended up worse than we started. We'll just remove that cake top. And I always save these for snacking because the top of the cake is the best part, and this is an amazing tasting cake. I'm just gonna put this aside here. All right, grab your favorite cake platter, and we can assemble this cake. We'll do a nice layer of buttercream right in the middle, nice even layer. Add our next layer. One thing I want to talk to you about is when you are baking this cake, it is so important that you do not overbake it. This applies to most cakes ever, but overbaking it will make it dry and crumbly. And this cake is moist and tender, but because of the nuts in it, it does lend itself to a more crumbly texture. So if you accidentally overbake it, you're going to end up with a cake that it's not as good as it's supposed to be. So just keep a careful eye on it in the oven. All right, our final level layer. Final layer. I like to do a semi-naked frosting just because I like to see the edges of the cake peeking through. But feel free to cover it entirely if you'd like. You will have enough frosting to do so. Now for the final touch, I like to add just a sprinkle of more chopped pistachios on top. Because I mean, it's just pretty. It's pistachio cake, can't have too many pistachios. All right, let's go ahead and cut into this cake so you can take a look at that interior and that texture. I did pop this in the fridge for like 15 minutes. I prefer cake at room temperature, but chilling it for just a little bit before we slice into it just makes the cake a little more stable. Check that out. So there you have it, beautiful plush pistachio cake. One thing you may notice about the crumb, like I said, because of all those nuts in there, it looks a little bit crumbly, but when you bite into it, it's going to be so tender and melt in your mouth. I really think you're going to love this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Make sure I get plenty of that frosting on there. I cannot wait for you to try this. Oh my gosh. Today we're going to be browning, pardon me, the pistachios. Okay. I did that intentionally. It's a design. It's art. You wouldn't understand. Probably not. Oh, couldn't help myself. It's so good.